Hello. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2.
That's going to be the intro now, you know. Go on then, off you go.
Hello everyone and welcome to Gachapod, the fairly regular in 2020 podcast that we're hoping, where every single episode we pop a coin into the pop culture machine, turn the crank and see what it shits out of its front bum. I'm Drew, I'm joined with my co-hosts as always, Matt.
Alright.
And Dan.
Alright.
Got there before him.
Good. It's 2020, boys.
I'm gonna copyright.
We're living in a dystopian
Trademark
future.
We are, yeah.
Yeah, we are,
War's
actually.
we're on the cusp of war.
Yeah, we're fucking up. It's actually happening. It's the cyberpunk Blade Runner vision of the future.
Yeah.
We've not got cool flying cars, but
Not
we've
yet,
got everyone
not
feeling practically suicidal and quite a lot of neon.
Elon Musk will promise it, and it won't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then accuse everyone of being pedos for it not happening. But we've
Allegedly.
got, yeah, allegedly. Yeah,
There's going to be a lot of that in this episode.
allegedly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not pedos.
No pedos. That's one of the few things that today's subject hasn't had a flirtation with that we know of. But it's because we don't admire him. So it's only my childhood figures that I admire that are coming forward as being some sort of sexual fucking predator these days.
Yeah.
R.I.P. John Lasseter.
They're coming forward.
Well, they're not coming
I'm the
forward
predator.
necessarily. Yeah. Well, most of them are just kind of going, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Sorry, I
It
shouldn't
was
have,
me.
shouldn't have shown him my balls.
Yeah.
But anyway, we've got a very fucking crazy tale today, right?
Yeah, it's not really a well-known one either, to be
It's
honest.
not. No, I had little to no knowledge of this, frankly. And after having a cursory glance at it, I was just like, this is this is great. This is fucking insane.
Yes.
But yeah, Matt's gonna tell us a bit more about it.
Certainly. We're talking about transforming pillows. You'll understand that a bit later on.
you
Unpaid
fuck 'em?
artists. What?
Do you fuck 'em?
Yes, Daniel. Moving on swiftly. Unpaid artists, stolen artwork, and awful photoshops. We're talking about Dreamwave, the short-lived comic publisher that rode the #1 spot for top-selling comics for a brief period of time before plummeting into the abyss. It was the year 2000, and Wizard magazine had put out a readers' poll for a beloved 80s license to return in comic books. Brace yourself, Drew. We had Thundercats by Jim Chung,
Ooh.
J. Scott Campbell's G.I. Joe, and Joe Mad's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh, it's a fucking golden age.
It really was.
Beautifully licensed product.
Absolutely garbage. Joe Mad's an artist that should have stayed in that era, is what I believe.
I mean, the thing is, in the year 2000, I was just fucking gobbling up absolute nonsense. If I look
Yes,
back
yeah,
at
same.
90% of the stuff I was reading back then, utter trash. But at the time, I would have just been like, oh, fucking look at this. They've coloured it using computers.
The wizardry.
9/11 changed everything.
It did, yeah.
It did. However, despite these licenses, there was one image that caught the eyes of thirsty fans. An image of Transformers, Megatron and Optimus Prime duking it out in space. The image was drawn by Pat and Alvin Lee. They belong to Dreamwave Productions, a studio birthed by Image Comics. This little drawing caught the attention of Hasbro, the toy company that had been rinsing my grandparents' wallet since I was born. Wizard brought back Pat Lee to teach readers how to draw mecha at one point, and that's where our troubles truly began. And honestly, it's weird if you look at the setup for this as well. You've got 4 steps on how to draw Optimus Prime's head. Basic, circular, oval shape, bit of detailing, lines, fuck-ton lines.
I absolutely love those artists' step-by-step creations where they do that, and I'm pretty sure they parodied it in an episode of The Simpsons where they were doing how to draw Homer at the end credits.
Yes, yeah.
And it was that sort of, draw 3 circles, then do everything else, and now you've got Homer
It's
Simpson.
insane. He should have finished on the second step, because this is a bloke that really only understood skinny robots as Neon Genesis Evangelion, and big bulky mechs as mech warrior types as well.
Well, that'll be the Eastern heritage there.
Yes, I think so. Yes, and also he believes bazookas should be attached on all arms. Apparently,
Whereas I believe bazookas should be firmly attached to the front of a lady's chest.
yeah. And also,
Sometimes
despite,
it's what I call titties.
yes, despite this image being quite popular with fans, he drew Megatron's fusion cannon on the wrong arm. Can you believe that?
Fucking hell. I've got half a mind to just flip the goddamn table at the mere mention of this. I should point out before we go any further, I've got what's known, it's a medical condition.
Yeah.
I've got what's known as Transformers face blindness. I can't fucking tell one giant grey robot
You say
from
medical
another.
condition, I sort of say some sort of new racism.
Yeah, if they were an actual real life race, yeah, I would definitely have to, maybe go to tolerance school about it a little bit.
There's someone out there that'll be offended by that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's someone sitting one chair over from me.
Yes, I'm shaking violently with rage.
I've done my time. I've done my fair share of reading Transformers comics. I own some of the series, one cartoon and the movie on DVD. I've seen some of those glorious Michael Bay cinematic efforts.
Yeah.
I just can't. They're just fucking big grey robots, Matthew.
They're more than that.
I very much enjoyed Matt's...
Some might say they're more than meets the eye.
I enjoyed Matt's little resign. Yeah, have to mention it. Michael Bay.
At the time, it caught the attention of Hasbro, and they desperately needed Transformers back in comic books. Because before then, it had been, since the 90s, I think 1992, 1994, when Generation 2 finished. So, it was a massive gap.
Was that with Marvel?
Marvel, yeah, Marvel
Right,
did
yeah.
those, and it was a UK imprint as well. And they did reach out to other publishers. Marvel was still recovering from their bankruptcy, so they didn't have the money. And just no other publishers were interested. So it unfortunately went to Pat and his brother, Roger Lee.
The third brother, Ken Lee.
Yes.
Ken Lee! Live it without you. That's right, we're bringing back the memes. People.
Yeah, so we are.
That was before memes. Before memes were even named as memes, they were just
That
jokes.
was a Cretaceous era meme.
Yeah.
A meme. Also, talking about Hasbro reaching this deal with Dreamwave in the end, it's quite possible that when they agreed to this license agreement, they didn't pay them the full license fee, apparently, Dreamwave.
Surely not.
This would be a common theme for us. In 2002, we actually had the first Dreamwave Transformers comic book that hit the shelves. It was sort of like a preview issue, and despite it being Pat Lee's first explosive Transformers title, it still had a different background artist. This became a very common theme, as there were several inkers, colourists, and somebody who just did the flats for just one issue of Transformers. How have you got multiple colourists and inkers?
Wasn't he doing stuff like he was getting paid a certain rate for each page as well? Like he'd get paid like $300 a page.
Yeah.
And then the person who was actually drawing it for him, he would pay like $60 to or something like that.
Probably.
The man is a fucking genius. Controversial opinion, but he's kind of a hero of mine. This guy lives his dream. He lives his truth. He knows what he's about. It's fucking people over, but he's just not afraid to wade in and really be a bit of a cunt about things.
It's like the Mike Ashley of the comic book world.
I don't know, who's that?
The bloke that owns Sports Direct. Everyone's like in slave labour. Like,
Oh, really? Okay.
Literally, women are giving birth in like the bathrooms because they can't afford to have time off work because they'll get sacked. They get like 3 strikes if they miss a... honestly, it's
Christ.
proper Victorian slave labour stuff. Awful.
And you're going to have to subscribe to our Patreon to hear the sister podcast on that. Dan's Hot Takes. That sounds nice, though.
Yeah, unsurprisingly, or some people might be surprised by this, the comics sold fuck tons. It soon started beating Marvel and DC in the top 10 charts as well. However, there were rumours of Diamond Comics somehow helping out, and that Hasbro had their own Diamond account where they were ordering multiples of the comic.
See, fucking genius! Say what you will about this man, but he is determined to own a Porsche.
Isn't that what Eric Trump did with his book? His book was a New York Times bestseller, but they had to put a little hash next to it.
Oh, that he bought like a million of his own copies or something like that, yeah.
I think it sold well regardless, because I think there was a limit for Hasbro's ordering.
Comic book tastes at the time were very geared towards that bombastic, brightly coloured, just fucking crazy, edgy artwork. I mean, this has all been shit out of Image Comics, really, hasn't it, in the 90s? And
yes, it really was. I think there's so many factors, like Transformers haven't had a comic for like almost a decade. It was the manga style that followed in all these books as well. So you've got a whole bunch of teenagers like me that have discovered it, as you said, during that age, and they're like, this is the best fucking thing I've ever seen. It wasn't.
We probably didn't have ready access to the actual Japanese sort of Transformers stuff at the time as well, so it's not even like you could...
No, there wasn't a great deal of that really being published either, and the manga Transformers is an entirely kind of different beast, I guess, to be honest. But it will be getting published soon. Anyway, for the first 6 months, Dreamwave did dominate with their Generation 1 comic, Transformers Armada, and more. Dreamwave, they ended up getting more licenses, unfortunately. Specifically for Capcom games, strangely enough.
They had like a fucking Mega Man comic,
Yeah,
right?
they did. They had Mega Man, they had Devil May Cry, and they also briefly had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but that only lasted 7 issues. Their entire catalogue consisted of 8 or 9 original series that actually got shelved for like licensed stuff.
I looked at some of this and
garbage. I mean, it was a reason it was shelved for the licensed stuff, but at the same time, it was funny how the second they got the licenses, they were like,
let's get rid of that fucking shit. Dark Child, what?
Yes, you'll hear that later. However, what's just funny, like, despite this being like in the top 10, Dreamwave forgot to buy the license to distribute outside of the US.
Oh, for God's sake.
How did they manage that?
This is a fucking example of like a creator thinking that they can go into business, and it's like, no, you draw the pictures.
Yeah.
Get someone else in to take care of, like, you know,
the important
fucking
stuff.
dotting the I's and crossing the T's.
But also, like, licensing as well, I think it's important to kind of briefly touch upon, because me and Drew get it a lot where we work, where somebody's like, have you got this? And we're like, no, because of licensing.
Yep.
There's several, like, off the top of my head that I can kind of think of.
It's a lot of the Cartoon Network comics,
a lot of the Cartoon Network comics, for example. You just can't get licensing for that anymore in the UK. But to everybody's surprise, all of these licensed comics, they didn't last very long. It became clear that something wasn't quite right with Dreamwave. Pat Lee was falling behind on his schedule, which actually affected the inkers and the colourists, and people were being told that other artists were apparently ghosting for him.
Yeah, wasn't it something to do, like, he was basically, they had a deadline for the publishing, and he would work up until, like, maybe 3 or 4 days before that deadline.
Yeah, he would, yeah.
Which meant that the inkers, the colourists, and the letterers and whatever basically had a fraction of the time that they would need to try and get every other fucking element of it done. Because he was just kind of... He had an original style, but he was a fairly average guy.
Well, this is interesting about their style as well, because Dreamwave insisted on a horrible like art style throughout all of their publications. This is what they wanted. It has to be Pat Lee's artwork or nothing, essentially. Which is why everything looked like pillow transformers, or like, you know, just like it was big blocky bodies, which you had sometimes, and robots that also looked like pillows. And a manga style that a 14-year-old DeviantArt fan would ejaculate over. Yeah.
DeviantArt was one of the first things that came to mind when I was looking at some of this stuff. Fucking diabolical.
Yes, it is. Interesting though, like, basically because of this like in-house style that they wanted, books like Transformers War Within had inkers changing the original pencils throughout the book.
Just imagine that, fucking sitting there, like, you're into your like 19th hour of being hunched over your desk for the day, and you're just like, fucking, he's not drawing it anyway. He's not going to fucking notice. He doesn't care.
No. It's insane. With press releases announcing new creators in Dreamwave, everything seemed peachy. However, these press releases were actually their attempt to cover up the fact that 2 writers had recently left Dreamwave offices over unpaid work. Their names were James McDonough and Adam Patek, and they hadn't been paid in months. Dreamwave even tried to get them to write a G.I. Joe and Transformers crossover for free. Apparently, it wasn't in their contract, but Dreamwave just wanted them to be team players.
Oh man, it's proto exposure books.
Yeah,
yes,
I was about to mention exposure.
Yeah, definitely getting paid in exposure, which you should never do.
Certainly not from a fucking shitty startup comic book company.
No, certainly not. These guys weren't the first ones as well to end up getting royally screwed over by Dreamwave. The company kept asking websites to actually remove this news of these writers' departure, and the news actually encouraged other creators to start turning down future projects in the offices.
You do go to Bleeding Cool though, you can find an article that very concisely gathers all of the documents, all of the websites and news reports that show the steady crumbling of Pat Lee and Dreamwave Productions. It's beautiful. Just Google like Pat Lee Dreamwave and go to a Bleeding Cool article, and it will give you a cool breakdown of
Rich Johnson, who we'll mention later on, has done a really good job. I think Bleeding Cool gets a lot of stick for their journalism, but sometimes it shines, as is the case with Rich believing that these people deserve this money.
It felt like investigative journalism within the comic book industry.
Definitely.
The guy you mentioned had an interview with him a few years ago, I think, as well, where he was just flat, and it obviously wasn't a face-to-face interview because Pat Lee was dodging a lot of stuff, but it was a very just hard-nosed, like, I'm going to ask you very direct questions, and you don't see it in the comic industry very often. Don't. Everyone's generally quite sort of nice to each other and supportive, and
because I think it was Newsarama or like CBR who were just like, they interviewed him after everything kicked off, but they didn't ask him a single question
about
anything anything that happens in the future, which we'll touch upon. Both writers actually reportedly owed $38,000 for their published work, and it wasn't like Dreamwave weren't making money. According to some sources, Pat Lee spent a great deal on the profits on a fancy new house, snazzy furniture, and here we go, a fancy Porsche.
Yep.
He really should have focused on spending that money on creators and the expensive licenses, because the costs and the drop in readership would eventually lead to bankruptcy.
The thing is, though, Matt, I don't think you appreciate how much focus you have to put into getting shredded abs. And ultimately, there comes a point in your life where you have to deviate and choose the path you want to go down. Do you want to be a fair, considerate, unselfish individual that makes sure that the people who work for you get, recompense and remuneration for their hard work?
Yeah.
Or shredded abs?
Have a sweet car and sweet abs.
A fucking sick-ass Porsche so you can smash puss in your Toronto mansion apartment and shredded abs. The man's a fucking hero. He knows exactly what he's about and he's not afraid to chase and pursue his dream.
Were steroids expensive back in then?
I have no idea. Sorry, go on.
It was actually around Christmas 2004 when Pat and Roger told staff that they were going into receivership. Everything was going to be fine, people were going to get paid. They kept on reassuring everybody up until the very last moment. Behind the scenes, however, the brothers were attempting to move their huge debts elsewhere, whilst dealing with Hasbro being very unhappy about the upcoming renewal of the licence. One writer as well, John Reber, was told he would be paid before Christmas for his work on the G.I. Joe and Transformers crossover. He actually hadn't heard anything official about Dreamwave moving their offices, but apparently the pressure from the recent lawsuit resulted in Pat and Roger totally reassuring staff that they'd be paid on time. It's ridiculous. The following month...
Just on the fucking phone, like, ugh, yeah, just in the middle of working out,
Yeah.
but still like, don't fucking worry about it.
2 more reps.
Jesus, fucking just go for the burn. You'll be paid on time, it's fine.
And yeah, surprise, surprise, which actually, this is the 15th anniversary. This week, apparently, the official statement for Dreamwave announcing their bankruptcy. They blamed a failing market and the weak US dollar for their demise. Nothing to do with Porsches. Their statement declared that it all became a bit too financially taxing. And even they somehow managed to fuck up by saying that they were the only Canadian publisher around. Completely forgetting ones, I think, Fantagraphics, I think they're Canadian. And Onipress as well.
I was going to say Onipress is Canadian as well, yeah.
Well done, lads. Pat and Roger apparently knew about Dreamwave's demise an entire year before it all fell apart as well, which is insane. But they made sure to take all the right precautions to keep their money. Reportedly, they ended up owing Hasbro $440,000 for the licence, but the entire debt caused by both the Lee brothers resulted in way over $1 million. It all got a little bit fishy as well, because obviously they knew about this like a year in advance. But one forum post by a Dreamwave employee alleged that Pat and Roger's parents were also set to be the secured creditors of Dreamwave's demise.
Oh, they made like an investment in the business,
They
didn't
did.
they?
And it was to the sweet tune of $141,000. In Canadian law, creditors need to be set up an entire year before a possible bankruptcy to make sure they're prioritised before
Yeah, it takes a
anybody
year
else.
to be secured, right? Yeah.
So they fucking knew. The offices were stripped of its content, including rare comics and exclusive prints that Roger ended up selling for a pretty penny on eBay. Rather than give it to the liquidators, they attempted to sell everything first. And do bear in mind this is according to one source anyway, so for legal reasons we're going to say that. And poor old Pat, he had to hand back his Porsche as well apparently.
He did. Sad times.
Yeah, it was on lease from BMW, but he purchased it anyway with the money he had left over.
Amazing.
Do you think he drove to hand it back, like with just a shirt on, but with his stomach?
Yeah,
out,
full on
like,
boy band
yeah.
style.
Oh, yeah,
But then the money in the boot,
yeah.
and he rocks up, takes his sunglasses off, opens
Just
the
going
boot,
to
and
hand
be like,
over the keys, but like
Yeah.
flexing
Yeah.
at the same time. He does it, like just holding it up, so
Yeah.
he's just really giving him a gun show. And
Drew's miming a gun show right now.
Do you know I draw Transformers?
transforming myself into a guard, bro.
There's no S at the end. We're in Canada.
Oh, sorry. Yes, from Toronto.
Yes,
Yes.
let's be racist. towards
Transforming
Canadians.
myself into a guard, eh?
Perfect.
Beautiful.
That's what I'm all about.
A boot. However, though, despite Dreamwave's bankruptcy, Pat wasn't done screwing over artists. Oh no. According to one source, Pat diverted some of Dreamwave's income into his brother's new fancy company, Dream Engine.
See, if you're gonna deliberately fuck and close your existing company and then funnel all your funds secretly into a new one, the best thing to do is make your new company sound exactly the fucking same as your old one.
Yeah.
And even then, when Dream Engine came about, he had 500,000 bucks for a new penthouse apartment as well.
Sure did.
Whilst other creators from Dreamwave hadn't actually seen a single penny for their work. Dream Engine promised big things. A huge deal with Sony to produce a video game and a film, I don't know fucking what of.
I read that so many goddamn times. Like, yeah, we're producing a feature film. No, at no point did they talk about what property that's going to be.
No.
Yeah, it was just going to be Pat Lee, the movie.
Yeah.
It's just a fucking hour and 40 minutes of him on one of those ab crunching machines.
Yeah. It's dressed up as a transformer.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
there's a great news segment that on like an upcoming Comic-Con on YouTube from like fucking 2001 or whatever it is, and it's Pat and Roger Lee sitting in a living room playing GameCube, playing Smash Brothers.
Oh yeah, I've seen
Have you seen this? And they're like transforming Transformers, and it's great because the anchor is talking over the top about like these guys are looking for their next property in, can you believe it, video games. Just in that full-on fucking early 2000s. Yeah. Can you believe these guys are making money from fucking kids' horseshit? But there's a great moment
this
where
was before Twitch as well.
Yeah, well, yeah. This is as close to streaming as you get.
Yeah.
But there's a great moment where she talks about the fact that they've got the license for Transformers, and they go to show a clip of the Transformers. It's the fucking GoBots.
Yes.
That's like, I mean,
hey, he said he had blindness. No, so you can tell a GoBot from a Transformer.
Well, to be fair, the GoBots look more like the fucking Dreamwave art style than the Transformers do, so I can understand the mix.
Not rounder. That was very
but
true.
yes, I did call shenanigans at that.
Yes. But Dream Engine's thing, they had that silly Sony deal, which they never actually explained what it was, and they were producing their own line of books. They were outsourcing a lot of stuff though, and this is where Pat Lee got friendly with Transformers artist Alex Milne, who was eventually screwed over. Basically, what happened with that is a publisher called Top Cow had an awful comic called Cyberforce, and despite Pat's name being all over the book, it was Alex Milne who had completed 95% of the artwork on the book.
With no credit.
Yeah, with no credit. And it's a shame because Alex Milne, like, I got to meet him earlier last year. Got a few fancy prints off him. He's a really nice chap, and he made his money off Transformers, but obviously he didn't make his money to begin with people like Pat Lee screwing him over.
Yeah.
And publishers Top Cow were actually reached out to Pat Lee for a comment about his work on Cyberforce. When the ghosting was revealed to be true, Alex Milne was fired by Pat Lee when the news hit.
It's so fucking sad because if you're an up-and-coming comics guy, right, at this time, like, yeah, there's rumours flying about Pat Lee, but you've got to remember, Pat Lee is still essentially riding the crest of, like, this, like, comics comeback. He is the protege of Rob Liefeld.
Yeah.
He has worked on multiple Marvel books, like, to someone who is just going to Comic-Cons and, like, presenting portfolios or whatever. This dude is like a legit way into the business. So you can absolutely understand why someone is willing to kind of throw in and maybe do some stuff that seems a little sketchy, but you think, well, maybe, you know, if I do these couple of jobs, that's going to give me like a step up the ladder.
Well, that's exactly how it works. That's exactly how they get you in.
Although I should also point out that Pat Lee took his portfolio to both Marvel and DC, and it was over 175 pages of work, and they both just fucking rejected the shit out of it straight away. No one was fucking interested in him at the time. It was, unsurprisingly, Liefeld that was like, your work's got potential, kid. And believe me, I know shit drawings.
Even I know what that is.
Yeah, well, that's it. Do you want to know why Alex Milne covered for Pat, though?
Yeah, go for it.
You won't guess this. He was too busy spending his company's hard-earned cash on a campaign to make his girlfriend Miss Hong Kong in 2006.
Yes.
He did it, didn't he? She fucking won.
Did she win?
Yeah.
I don't know if she won or not, to be honest.
Are we doing a Google?
We're going to find a
picture.
picture.
We'll find out.
Miss Hong
I think
Kong.
her name's Amy Chan.
Amy Chan.
That's... Don't mean to be racist, but that's going to bring up far too many results. Miss...
That's always a good start. Don't want to be racist,
Don't mean to be racist, but here comes my racist statement. Proves racist statement. Another of our Patreon podcasts.
Boris Johnson's Britain.
Stop with the politics.
Oh, sorry.
Miss Hong Kong 2006.
Sorry, Tories, but fuck you.
I mean, I don't know which one it is.
That could have.
Well, no, there's no. No, there's just lots of pictures of Chinese women in bikinis.
Oh, is it that one with a crown on her own?
One assumes.
Yeah, you'd reckon.
Definitely fappable.
Now put Pornhub at the end of that search.
Okay.
I feel like it's not an episode unless we're not on Pornhub.
Check what Wi-Fi you're connected to, Drew.
Oh yeah.
Have you got a VPN on there?
No.
There's a man in a beret with an AK-47 there. Interesting. Save that for later. Sorry, Matt.
Getting back onto it.
You told us to riff.
I did, yes, that's true. It may come as a huge shocker for everyone, but Dream Engine didn't last that long. think they lasted like 2 years tops.
Yeah.
Pat Lee attempted other business ventures. He landed himself in Hong Kong, and some of his other business startups don't really show anything substantial. I had a look, couldn't find a single thing. And he's also now single.
Yeah, but he's got sweet abs for Tinder.
This is it. It comes as a surprise if you've ever seen his like Angel Fire website, which is still live.
Don't try and access it on a mobile device.
No.
Funnily enough, it's not formatted for that.
But yeah, that's it. That's why we were like riffing about the flame effects as well. Sorry, the abs.
Yeah.
But like on the Angel Fire website, there he is, open shirt with the flame effects. There's him and his two brothers with like a nuclear bomb explosion in the background.
It's fucking beautiful.
Yeah,
That does sound
it's wonderful.
really hot.
He is just. I feel like I need to take a serious look at my life and my priorities, and start worshipping at the Church of Lee a little bit more, because the man. He just knows what he's about.
It's about himself.
He's about sweet abs,
It's
fast
about him,
cars.
Yeah. He knew what he was doing. He played all them nerds.
It was me, Austin. It was me all along.
As we know, he managed to screw over loads of people, but one really stuck with me. He meted. I've started that down.
He meted.
I know.
Edit, snip.
That's staying in after you took the piss out of me with skeletons.
I mean, send me the edit. I'll edit it. Pat Lee managed to screw over a lot of creators, as we know, but this one really stuck with me. He's one of the most well-regarded characters in Transformers history, I'd say. He's one of the most important writers, along with Bob Budiansky. His name is Simon Furman. Simon Furman, I've had the pleasure of meeting a few times, I believe. And he's one of the friendliest...
To the point now that when he sees you moseying towards the table,
it's not that guy.
Oh, Jesus, here we go.
I met him a couple of years ago in London, and he signed a Transformers Armada comic from Dreamwave, which I think he must have signed it on. Finally, some money back for this. But I came up to him, and this was a guy that wrote a lot of the episodes for Beast Wars, which, as many people who know
I'm sure that's going to get its own fucking episode.
Yes, a podcast series, sir.
An episode by episode breakdown of shitty CGI.
As you can imagine, you've got like a nervous nerd speaking to Furman, who's kind of a bit of a nervous guy as well. And I was like, please, could we have more Beast Wars? And he was like, I'll see what I can do.
Wow.
And that's the 15th time someone said that to me
Yes, exactly.
today.
Exactly.
It's like one of those Lynx adverts where women just, for no reason at all, just start moving towards you.
Yes.
They're not quite sure why, but just something, some hormone or pheromone's been activated in the air, and all of a sudden, the mating call's been given out. And
Totally.
this is assuming there are women at a Transformers convention.
They're a surprising amount, to be honest.
Yeah.
If you go on Tumblr and put in
I'm alright.
Transformers, you'll find some...
Isn't it all age-gated now, though?
Oh, well, I don't know. There might be some, like, Transformers kissing each other.
Oh, cool. I'm into that.
Might be, Matthew. Might be.
I wouldn't know.
Now, important question, but when Transformers kiss, are there sparks?
Yes, I'd assume so.
Okay, cool. I'm really upset with that, haven't I?
No, it's just you got very serious with that
I know,
question
well,
for a second. Yeah.
that was
We
the
wanted
joke.
to know. His work on Dreamwave was actually pretty solid as well, despite all the horrible wonky artwork. Stuff like War Within kind of laid the foundations for a lot of Transformers stuff now as
So
well.
is this shit canon? Is this shit all part
Oh,
of...
hell no.
Right,
No,
okay.
no. They did pull a lot of stuff from like stuff like the War Within, like some of the ideas, but otherwise...
So it was a bit of a kind of like how certain parallels were taken from the expanded universe with some of the new Star Wars stuff.
Yeah, to a degree.
So Star Wars
yes.
expanded universe stuff is not
I mean,
canon anymore.
stuff in War Within, you actually see in Michael Bay's films.
Right, okay.
Which is very surprising.
What, he actually researched?
Well, no,
he had research.
he was paid to go.
Okay. Well,
He was just looking at explosions.
And Megan Fox's greasy
Yeah.
arsehole.
God, you make it sound so appealing.
And can we guess how much Simon was owed at least?
Jesus.
Two writers were owed 37 to 38, so he was owed 18,000 by Dreamwave for all of his published work as well. And Dreamwave were encouraging this guy to write more content despite late payments and the knowledge that they were going under. Pat would actually lie straight to Simon during dinners as well, which is very infuriating. Lying straight to him as well, straight to his face. And then Furman, he would leave slightly reassured, would hurry back to his hotel room and then scribble away the next script at a blistering pace.
Well, they were doing this shit at like Comic-Cons, weren't they?
Yeah,
so like they were
Comic-Cons.
going out for dinner together in the evening, and then like he was kind of going, well, we've got this deadline, and I need you to work on this, and so
insane.
That's how he would spend his evening in the hotel
Was
room.
the quality still good despite the rushed sort of?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But the sad thing is, I mean, fucking, Pat Lee's just absolutely spunking money absolutely everywhere. But the artists that he's fucking over, these guys have got mortgages, and
yes,
even in the kind of the boom, unless you were one of the kind of top 10, top 15 creators, it was still tough to eke out a decent living, even writing for big publications. So you kind of had no choice but to like jump in with both feet on this kind of stuff. And
I'm surprised we've not heard court case, like proper cases over this as well, because there's a lot of money involved.
Yeah, it really feels like it's some sort of satisfactory legal conclusion.
I think it's one of those things though, like, because I've had it in the past when I've done film work where you've been chasing these people for such a long time, you get to the point where you're just like, I can't be fucked anymore.
Yeah.
And you think, I need to move on with my life and not just,
Well, yeah, I suppose if you're paying solicitors' fees and things like that.
Yeah.
But,
it's almost like they can hide behind the fact that you ain't got the money to challenge them because they ain't fucking paid you.
No.
If only he'd go full Uwe Boll and challenge them to like boxing.
That'd be great. We should do that.
Fucking, oh my god, that guy's getting his own episode at some point.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Poor old Furman though, like he learned the hard way not to deal with like companies like this. He has said since not to believe a single word that comes out of Pat Lee's mouth, and when asked whether or not he'd be able to work on an IDW Transformers comic, he said, "Over my dead body."
I mean, that's fair enough.
Yeah, I think so, definitely. So, what did Pat Lee do though in between driving his many Porsches around his many failing companies?
To the gym.
Yes. Well, he even gave it a go at an animated series which was produced in China as well.
Where all the best animated series are created.
Yes, surprise, surprise, this was a direct rip-off of a different Japanese anime. And it had transforming trains in it as well.
Amazing.
I want to see that. That sounds awesome.
This is what I find really amusing as well. Like, it's very small detail, but somebody kept editing his Wikipedia page entry.
Yeah.
And it was edited like 5 or 6 different times by a registered user in 2008. And noticeable edits include: Pat has also given his creative edge to monster titles such as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Devil May Cry and Transformers, which ranked the #1 top-selling comic book 6 months in a row. And Pat was acknowledged as one of the first creators in comic book history to achieve such a goal.
Amazing.
Pat Lee continues to bring innovative and creative styles globally.
So I presume these edits were made by Shred Abs 420 years ago.
Yeah. Porsche 911.
Yeah.
I looked at the actual times of the edit, and then you do it at like 2 o'clock or like 4 o'clock, and then late at night afterwards. So you must have been sitting there, like shirt open, like late at night going,
Allegedly.
"It needs to be cooler." Yes, allegedly.
Typing with one hand, rubbing oil into his belly with the other.
What belly? You mean abs?
Well, yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, it's just like he's just making sure he glistens at all times.
As Drew's picked up on, we can blame Rob Liefeld for this as well. He was the one that hired him at a comic convention and got him working on titles called Bloodpool and Dark Child.
Yeah, Dark
Good
Child.
old Rob.
Dark Child is a heck of a comic. I had several issues of Dark Child. It fulfills that checklist of early 90s Image pieces of shit that is just like edgy, gory, bombastic. Apparently had a very big female audience because it was a female protagonist and she could just turn into monsters.
Oh, sure.
Basically, it's just fucking trash book. Like it's like Liefeld saw The Darkness, not the band.
Yes, they did the comic.
Who did the fucking book? Silvestri? It was a
Yes,
Silvestri book.
yeah.
I went like, I need something like that, but
Dark Child.
but shittier.
Yeah.
Yeah, heck of a book.
If our listeners really struggle to try and find images of this beautiful man known as Patrick Lee, you can also find him through his alias as well. Brace yourself, folks. His name, Michiyamenotehi Funana.
Beautiful.
And how did he get this name, may you ask? Well,
Some sort of traditional ritualistic tea ceremony,
of course,
I presume.
of course. Now, the dingus actually put his entire name into a Japanese katakana translator online. But instead of doing it properly...
Like you've never done it! Like you've never done it!
There's no... I was about to say, I bet you he did one of those online things where you can change your name. Like Childish Gambino.
Oh, well, he actually translated his entire name letter for letter in katakana, which isn't not like... It doesn't work that way,
works,
Pat.
no.
But however, let us not forget that this is a man that thought it would be really cool if Transformers were toys after the animated series came out. He was sitting there thinking, that'd be really cool if they actually got some toys out of this series. They were fucking made before the TV series. Also, I discovered this in a quote. He thinks Beast Wars is rubbish.
What? Surely not.
I mean...
That's not a widely held opinion at all.
Yeah, people love Beast Wars, Drew. I mean, it didn't help my...
You are the only man I've ever met
who just defended it.
who gives a flying fuck about that show.
I have sat down with Drew and showed him an episode of Beast Wars. And the look on his face.
Just... It hurts. It confuses... Why did they call him Optimus Primal?
Yeah, when he came up with a better pun for
Aptimus Prime, people! Aptimus Prime! Or as our friend Dan, not this Dan, another Dan came up with the other day, obviously if you're not going to go with the ape motif, Octopus Prime works very well as well.
Yeah, but he was cooler as a big ape dude.
I don't know, man, a giant fucking robot octopus?
Nah.
No.
They did that. I can't remember what his name was, but regardless.
You keep arguing, this is great.
Not Octopus Prime.
No. The writing was solid. I mean, the CGI has not dated very well.
No, it was a bit of a reboot, wasn't it? It was a bit of a...
It was. People were angry back in the 90s as well, like on old forums. If they're like archived somewhere, you can see people saying, truck, not monkey, in regards to Optimus Prime's difference.
If I ever get another band together and bring out an EP, that is absolutely what I'm calling it.
Truck, not monkey. Back in 2010, we got a lot of research from Bleeding Cool as well, so props to them.
Yeah.
He actually had an interview. He agreed to an interview, believe it or not, about his how much money he was owed to these creators, and he mentioned he was setting up a creative refund movement, which would investigate who was owed based on what was sold. As a surprise to nobody, not one person has apparently seen that money in the last decade.
It was just fucking him looking at his bank statements going like, I don't fucking see. No.
This is all my money.
This is my money. Look, Porsche, another Porsche. Yeah. Big lamp for my gym.
Yeah.
Steroids, allegedly.
Ab oil.
Yes.
I can't pay you. I need ab oil. I can pay you in ab oil, but you don't have the shredded abs for it. What good would it be for you? Yeah, it's just vats from like the fucking takeaway down the street, and he's just
imagine you threw like $1 or something at like a crater, like, oiled up as well or something.
Yeah, it was too greasy to catch. That's going to be the name of his memoirs.
Too greasy to catch. It's got so many meanings.
And it'll be one of those covers where the abs are like embossed, so you can feel them on the photo.
Oh, that sounds sexy.
As we know, though, Dreamwave left a very nasty mark on the Transformers franchise. Even IDW, who took over afterwards, they really struggled to get the ball rolling because I think they spoiled the name Dreamwave did, to be honest. Despite a few strong miniseries, they really didn't hit their stride until Robots in Disguise and More Than Meets the Eye. And More Than Meets the Eye, I'll probably do like a separate episode on that, but that's thanks to like James Roberts and artists like Alex Milne, who really changed, or dare I say, the best piece of Transformers fiction ever made.
Yeah, I read quite a bit of that, and again, whilst it's just never going to be my thing, I recognise the strength of the writing for sure.
Yes, definitely.
It's a solid book, even if you're not a fan. You know, you can literally, you could kind of take the Transformers name away from it entirely and the character names, and it would still stand as a very good kind of space.
Totally.
Epic space kind of.
Because all the themes it tackles throughout it.
Yeah.
You can remove Transformers from it easily. This case of unpaid artists, uncredited workers, and pillar Transformers is a clear reminder that people deserve to be paid for their work. If you're an artist who is struggling with a choosing beggar or some shitty freelance gig, don't bother. We'll close it with your art has work, you have worth. Get paid.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the landscape is that fucking different now as well. You don't have to rely on going to... I mean, you can still do that, but you don't necessarily have to rely on taking a portfolio to one of these review things at a Comic-Con or something. That shit does happen, and that's still a very valid way of getting work. But the internet's a thing now.
Yes.
You know, and it was a thing back then as well, but not in the same way in terms of being able to share your work, and you know, you can self-publish for, you know, very kind of minuscule costs now and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, never fucking take exposure, never take a promise.
Future work.
Make sure you get everything in writing. All of that shit.
I've had cover features in magazines sold in supermarkets.
Yeah.
And I haven't got paid.
Yeah, I've done film work, like you said. I think you've
we've all done stuff.
Former company because they closed down and moved their assets elsewhere and make another film and then rinse repeat.
Sound familiar?
Yeah, precisely.
And that man was Pat Lee. No. Yeah, it's one of those things. I think it's fucking bizarre the impact and the legacy it ultimately had. Like you say, for a long time, it seems like it was a massive struggle to kind of claw it back. When you consider what a household name Transformers is at this point as well, you know, everyone knows what a Transformer is.
Yeah, and I don't know what the numbers were for IDW, but it was one of those where it was just nobody really cared after the shit Dreamwave pulled, and like unfinished storylines as well. Like you invested in these books that ran up to like 25 to 30 issues, they disappear off the stands. And
that felt like it was par for the course in the 2000s, though.
Yes, yeah, to a degree. Yeah,
there was a lot of early Wildstorm stuff that I remember reading, and then it would just stop, and you're like, "Can I?"
I think Pat Lee worked on Wildcats as well. I think or
he
something.
did, yeah, unsurprisingly.
Yeah,
amazing.
Well, there we go.
Thank you. Well, bit of a short one for you this week, folks, but fuck me, what a roller coaster. That is a goddamn weird story, and
yeah, it's a weird one. Not many people know about
again, it. I think crazy that he's not really been taken to task in a more formal kind of way, because he's just kind of done all this and managed to avoid any real repercussions other than kind of the stain on his name. But even then, you know, he seems to be kind of carving out a living doing
something now. It's one of those things. I guess a disclaimer in case some multiple Porsches might get parked outside my house or something. This is based on sources. It's all alleged, apart from the fact people definitely weren't paid, but everything else was alleged. So if I get taken away and I get oiled up or something, I'm thrown into a bag.
Drowned in a bag of oil.
Yes, drowned in a bag of oil. Remember me.
Cool. Well, I think that is going to do it for this episode of Gachapod. Thank you very much for listening. As usual, if you can subscribe on whatever platform you listen to us on, that really helps us with visibility.
Please share as well.
Please do. Share, let people know about it if you like it. If you think they'd like it, you can find our Facebook page. Just search Gachapod.
You can also do it if you want, Pat. Go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Get in touch, dude. We'd love to have you on the podcast.
Yeah,
we'll Skype you in.
Yeah. But share because I don't know how to.
Oh, God.
So
still doesn't know how to. He asked me if we'd sponsored our Facebook page.
I saw some. I logged onto Facebook and suddenly there's like this.
You were like, Matt, did you pay for sponsors?
Did you do a sponsor?
No, you fucking idiot.
Old man yells at clouds. Can't beat it.
Oh, it's just Facebook.
But yeah, we're on Twitter. We're on Instagram.
Facebook, SoundCloud, Spotify, all on a lot of stuff.
Well, you were telling me about a few listeners from
America.
And was the one.
Germany, some in New Zealand as well. So thanks for listening.
That's cool.
Sorry about my accent, Germans.
I don't really do much in the social media thing. I'm going to try a little bit more this year, but you can find me on Twitter at @ink_and_booze. I don't know if you guys want to.
I'm not giving Pat Lee my information.
I don't post anything relevant to anyone that's ever listened to this.
Fair enough.
Well, you just follow the podcast stuff.
Yeah, follow the podcast stuff.
Say hi, have a whinge at us about what you disagree with about the podcast if you want to, whatever you like. And
constructive feedback.
Right, just fucking make it whatever feedback, I don't care.
Yeah, rant it, it's cool.
I'm not going to read it.
Yeah.
Just direct it all at Dan.
I won't be able to access it, but sure.
Yeah, that's going to do it for this week, guys. Anyway, thank you very, very much, and we will see you next time.
Goodbye.
See you later.